Imagine this: a soft-spoken man, a work offer, a quiet cabin so remote the only way to get there is by plane. She thought she was just going to earn some money. But it wasn't a gig. It wasn't a mistake. It was a hunt. And she was told that there was only one rule that she had to follow. And that rule was... run. What's going on, Midnight Mafia? Thank you guys so much for joining me. I know I'm a day late, should have had it out Monday, but I wanted to try Tuesday. Let me know in the comments what your favorite time for an upload is. 6 p.m., 10 p.m., EST, where you are in the world. Tell me where you are so I can structure these better for you. But Hell Month, Episode 4, this is a good one, and so is the next one. So make sure you turn your notifications on all. Please do that right now. I'll give you a second. And hit that like button, hit hype also, and without any further ado, as of now, it's time to slip into a mind that's not our own. Let's go. On June 13th, 1983, a 17-year-old girl named Cindy was working the streets of downtown Anchorage, Alaska, when a man pulled up beside her in a Buick. And he rolled down his window and made her an offer. $200. And it wasn't unusual. This was how she made her money. So she got inside the car. And the man that made this offer, he was, thin, wiry, maybe in his early 40s. He had this stutter that made him seem, very harmless, shy even. He suggested that they drive somewhere, more private. And Cindy, of course, at this point, agreed. But as soon as they pulled into this secluded area, the man reached underneath his seat. Cindy heard this metallic click, then that cold steel against her temple. A .357 Magnum. Yeah, the type of gun from the Clint Eastwood movies, okay? He told her in that stuttering type of voice that if she did exactly what he said, well, he wouldn't hurt her. Clearly, at this point, Cindy's body just went cold. See, in that moment, she knew this wasn't a bad client. This was something else entirely. This man drove out to downtown Anchorage, winding through residential streets until they reached a quiet neighborhood on the outskirts of town. And as they pulled up to this blue house with a dead end sign right at the corner. And Cindy, even though she was absolutely terrified at this point, she made herself pay attention to every little detail of what was going on. The house had no trees in the front yard. There were massive antler horns mounted on the roof, and this kind of cream-colored Datsun station wagon that sat in the driveway. She's remembering every detail as if her life depended on it. And that's when the man opened up the garage door with the automatic opener, and he pulled on inside. He grabbed Cindy by the arm and then dragged her into the house. And what Cindy saw inside that house made her realize that she had just entered a nightmare. Everywhere, and I mean absolutely everywhere, there were nothing but dead animals. These mounted caribou heads with glassy eyes just, staring down at her. These wolf pelts hanging from the walls. Stuffed ducks and geese that were positioned throughout the rooms. Plus enormous antlers just on every wall. Fish mounted on plaques as well. The entire house was a shrine to hunting. This man loved killing things. And right in the middle of all this, he dragged Cindy right down to the basement. And as you could imagine, the basement was worse than upstairs. More animal heads, more trophies, and in the center of the room, he chained Cindy by the neck to a post. He handcuffed her wrists, and then, in the most disturbing move of all, he told her, "Relax." He said that everything would be okay and that, he liked her and that he would not hurt her. And then, since he just went all the way out to Anchorage, got this girl Cindy, drove all the way back, he was tired. So he walked in the other room on the couch and took a nap. As you could imagine, Cindy is sitting there now, chained like an animal, listening to this man's breathing as he slept. She could feel the cold metal of the handcuffs just digging into her wrists, and the chain around her neck was very heavy. And she didn't know who he was. She didn't know what he ultimately wanted. All she knew is that if she wanted to survive, she needed to stay calm and wait for an opportunity. So when the man woke up about an hour later, he looked at Cindy and started talking. And what he said made her blood run even colder than before. He told them he was going to take her to this cabin out in the middle of the wilderness. He said it was a very special place, remote, quiet, accessible only by plane or boat. No roads leading to it, no neighbors, just wilderness, an island. And then he mentioned, almost casually, that there had been 7 other girls before her. 7 girls that he had taken to that exact cabin before. 7 girls who had been exactly where Cindy was right now. So Cindy's mind was racing at this point. I mean, she absolutely knew that those girls must be dead. And the man was telling her, without actually saying the words, that he'd killed 7 women. And she thought that she was about to be number 8. But Cindy didn't panic. She just told herself that she would wait. She would find that moment and that she would survive this. That's what she was telling herself. So at this point, the man unchained her from the post, but he kept the handcuffs on her. And he walked her upstairs and then back to his car, following her every step with that gun in his hand. Her hands were still cuffed in front of her body, and he put her in the back seat, crouched down where, she couldn't be seen through the windows, and then he started driving. And Cindy, even in this extreme terror, kept making these mental notes. They were heading to Merrill Field, a small local airport. The man told her he was a pilot and that he owned a plane. And once they got to that airfield, he would fly her out to the cabin with his own plane. And Cindy kind of realized, this was it. Once she got on that plane, once they flew out into the wilderness, there would be absolutely no escape. No one would hear her scream, and no one would ever find her body. So she had to make her move at the airport. It was her only chance. So when they pulled into Merrill Field, Cindy could see the man's plane through the car window. A blue and white Piper Super Club parked on the tarmac. And the man got out and told Cindy to stay in the car. And that if she ran, he said it very clearly, he would kill her. And then he asked, "Do you understand?" Cindy just nodded, and she watched as he walked over to the plane and started, loading gear into the back. Rope, supplies, tools, all the things he would need to do whatever he was planning to do with her out in the wilderness. His back was turned for a moment. She looked at the cockpit, looked at the back. She had 10 seconds to decide what to do. And don't forget, if she picked wrong, if she hesitated even for one moment, she would vanish into the forest forever. And right there, that's when Cindy made her move. She threw herself into the driver's seat, hands still cuffed together, and managed to grab the door handle, and the door swung open. And then she just ran. Seriously, close your eyes and try to imagine this, barefoot, handcuffed, running for her life across the airfield towards 6th Avenue. Behind her, she heard the man yelling at her to come back. She would hear his footsteps pounding on the pavement, but Cindy just kept running. She ran harder than she had ever ran in her life. And then, as almost if it was a miracle, a pickup truck appeared on 6th Avenue out of nowhere. And the driver was a man named Robert Yount. And he saw this teenage girl sprinting toward him, in handcuffs, barefoot and terrified. and he immediately pulled over. So Cindy then jumped into his truck and begged him to drive now. Just drive, get her away from here now. Back at the airfield, the man who had kidnapped her stood there watching as Cindy disappeared into the truck. He didn't chase after them. He didn't call the police. He just calmly got back into his car and drove away, almost as if nothing had happened at all. And of course, less than an hour later, the police arrived at Big Timber Motel after Robert Yunt called them. Cindy, at this point, was just shaking uncontrollably, still trying to remove the handcuffs from her wrists. And she told them everything. Every detail that she could remember. The blue house with the antlers on the roof, the man with the stutter, the basement full of dead animals, the plane at Merrill Field. She told them about the 7 other girls as well. And she didn't know it yet, but her escape would uncover 24 graves. And when police drove her back to the airport, Cindy pointed directly at the blue and white Piper Super Cub type of plane that it was. And she was certain that was his plane. So a security guard at this point approached the officers and said he'd noticed something suspicious earlier that afternoon. He'd seen a man acting strangely near that plane, and he'd written down the license plate number of that car that the man had been driving. I mean, talk about an act of good faith that turned into good luck, because that car belonged to a man named Robert Hansen. Now, here's the thing about Robert Hansen. On the surface, he was the last person anyone would suspect of being a predator. Robert owned a bakery in downtown Anchorage. He was known around the town as Bob the Baker. He would even give out donuts to the police officers. He was married with 2 children. He went to church. He was soft-spoken. He was polite. He had that stuttering speech pattern that made him seem almost shy. The cops in Anchorage knew him well. They stopped by his bakery for coffee and donuts all of the time. Robert had grown up in Iowa, the son of a Danish immigrant who owned a bakery. He'd been bullied in school because of his stutter and his bad acne that he had on his face, so all these girls just rejected him. And meanwhile, the boys made fun of him. So he'd escaped into hunting, out in the woods, alone with his rifle. That's when he was in true control. And when he moved to Alaska in the 1960s, he set several local hunting records. People respected him for that. So when police are now questioning Robert about Cindy's accusations, he denied everything. He said she was lying, this never happened, and that she was lying to actually extort money from him. So was she? The cops believed him, because monsters don't have fangs or a sign on them that says, "I'm a monster." They're everyday people. They wear aprons. Plus, not to mention actually, Robert had friends that gave him an alibi. And because Cindy was a sex worker, and because Robert seemed like such a harmless family man who made donuts for police officers, the case stalled. And for months, it looked like Robert was going to get away with it. And you know, come to think of it, maybe this was all made up. Maybe Cindy had met Robert for sex work, and they encountered each other, you could say, and she found out about his bakery and found out that he had a lot of money. So maybe she decided to make this all up. Well, that's even kind of what the cops thought. But there was one detective who really didn't give up on this case. His name was Glenn Floth, and he'd been investigating a string of missing women and bodies found around Anchorage for years. Young women, sex workers, exotic dancers, etc. I mean, literally, these women who had vanished without a trace turned up dead in shallow graves in the wilderness. And when he heard Cindy's story, something just clicked in his mind. His gut could not let this go because it was mirroring exactly what he was seeing around Anchorage. So that's when Floth reached out to the FBI and requested a criminal profile. The FBI profiler said the killer would likely be an experienced hunter. Also someone with low self-esteem. Someone who had been rejected by women his whole life. And believe it or not, someone who actually might have a speech impediment. And someone who might keep trophies of his victims. So actually, this profiler fit Robert Hansen perfectly. And it took months, but Floth built his case. He tracked down Robert's alibi witnesses, and under pressure, they admitted that they had lied. Floth obtained a search warrant for Robert's home, vehicles, and plane. And on October 27th, 1983, investigators executed that warrant. And the attic looked very clean at first. Just insulation and boxes. Until one officer brushed against something very soft. Something wrapped carefully in insulation that should not have been there. And in that little corner, hidden under layers of pink fiberglass, they found jewelry belonging to several missing women. And they found multiple firearms, including a .223 caliber rifle. And when forensic tested that rifle, the bullets matched the bullets found in the bodies of the murdered women. I mean, they thought they would find evidence, but they actually found a roadmap to the dead. Because behind the headboard of Robert's bed, the bed he shared with his wife, was an aviation map of this Anchorage area. And all over that map were these X marks, 24 of them to be precise. Some of them were circled and some with notes next to them. Floth just stared at those X marks for a very long time. And then it hit him. Each X was a grave. Each X was a woman that Robert had hunted and killed in the Alaskan wilderness. And some of those X marks already matched locations where bodies had already been found. But many of them were in places that investigators had never searched before. Places so remote out in the wilderness that bodies could have stayed hidden there forever. So at this point, when detectives bring Robert in for questioning, they lay out all of the evidence. The jewelry, the rifle, the map. They told him that they would wait until spring, until the snow melted, and they would go to every single one of those X's. And when they went there, they would bring their tracking dogs and they would dig until they found what was buried there. And all of a sudden, that's when something completely changed in Robert Hansen. The prosecutor who was in the room said he watched Robert's face turn red. The hair on the back of his neck literally stood up, and in that moment, that mild-mannered baker disappeared. What was left was something cold and predatory. And Robert Hansen confessed to everything. He would pick up sex workers and exotic dancers from Anchorage's strip clubs and downtown streets, and he would kidnap them at gunpoint, take them to his home, chain them up in the basement. He would SA and torture them. And then he would drive them to Merrill Field. He would put them in the plane and fly them out to this remote Alaskan wilderness. He had supplies cached throughout the wilderness in barrels, rope, ammunition, shovels, duct tape. I mean, he literally thought he was living in a video game. And once they were out there miles from civilization, with nothing but trees and mountains in every single direction, he would release them. He would give them a head start. Maybe 5 minutes, maybe 10. And then he would hunt them down like animals with his Ruger Mini 14 rifle and his hunting knife. He admitted to murdering 17 women, though investigators suspected the real number was much higher, possibly 30 or more. And in February 1984, Robert Hansen was sentenced to 461 years plus life in prison without parole. He led police to 17 grave sites throughout the Alaskan wilderness, 12 of which had been completely unknown. But there were 3 X marks on his map that he refused to explain. Yeah, 3 graves near Resurrection Bay that he never admitted to. I guess some secrets he decided he would take with him to the grave. And in fact, he did. Robert Hansen died in prison in August 2014. And somewhere out there, still buried under the snow and moss, are women marked only by an X on a map, left behind by a baker who hunted. And none of it would have been uncovered if one terrified teenager hadn't had the courage to escape and then outrun the killer with her hands cuffed together. That is true courage. That is an ending I can get on board with. But thank you guys so much for watching. And let me tell you, if you thought this was good, this is one of my favorite stories. I don't know, it just happened to come upon me and I love it. I mean, not love it like that, but you know what I mean. And I actually did a short about this like 4 years ago, so who would have thought? But I have another crazy story of the wilderness that I think you should explore in your free time. And that one's going to be right here. Not to mention, my last episode is right here, and the one from last Monday is right here. You got to check them out. The numbers are low. I mean, that's why I almost didn't want to post this, but I got to because I love you guys, okay? Please like this video. Let's get it up to 150 likes. Let's get a personal best. Let's do it. All right, guys. I love you. I'll see you next time. Cheers.